Hello, welcome to High Vibe Astrology. This is Jennifer. Thank you for joining me as we take a look at the Scorpio New Moon, drawn up for November 1st, 2024 at 8:47 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're new, thank you for finding this channel. Thank you for being here and for supporting this community with your positive energy. If you are listening for the first time and haven't subscribed, I would appreciate it if you would do so. Hit the like button and share the messages as you feel guided. These are all free and easy ways to support this channel. I've been talking about Scorpio a lot this year and addressing the fact that Scorpio has 3 symbols, not just 2. And I feel that this third symbol is too significant to ignore. We always hear about the scorpion and the phoenix, but rarely do astrologers talk about the third symbol. And as a Scorpio sun with a stellium of Scorpio in my own chart, I feel called to speak to this because I've been living it. And I feel like who better to share this perspective than someone who has been on the Scorpio journey. So it is from a personal perspective that I speak to these issues as I see them. Obviously, take what resonates and leave the rest behind. If you've been listening to me for the last year at least, you'll know that I wrote a book on Sedna, and since that time, I have come to believe that Sedna has a lot to do with this third symbol. It is symbolic of the death and rebirth process, as well as integrating the shadow so that we can unite our own duality, light and shadow in harmony, as the means for transcending it. It's not about rising above it, sublimating, repressing, and suppressing the shadow. It's exactly the opposite. It's shining a light on the shadow and bringing it into our conscious daily awareness so that we can align it with the divine and in that way transcend it. Transcending trauma and the drama of this 3D reality doesn't mean that you get a free pass from the human experience. It's exactly the opposite. So I'm going to share a short poem that came through when I contemplated Sedna's energy, and I really feel that it embodies her message to us. It represents the extremes that are even greater than Pluto's extremes. Pluto is a 248-year cycle. One Sedna year, in contrast to that, is 10 to 12,000 years. So this is basically half of one great year when we're discussing the precession of the equinoxes. So here's the poem. My higher dimensions call to you to face your lowest lows. The paradox of going within transcends the path you chose. Your destiny for the future lies not in repeating the past. I represent that part of you that defies another's typecast. Your ancestors speak to you through me. There is magic in your blood. By healing the ocean of consciousness, you avoid the cataclysmic flood. This cataclysmic flood is referring to the waters that rose at the end of the Ice Age when Sedna was last in our solar system. But this is not what is going to be repeated. Sedna's energy is calling us to realize the power we have to create our future in this present moment through our intention, our thoughts, our words, our deeds, the energy we embody. And really, Sedna is an interconnection to water. The emotion we are learning to overcome is fear. Fear about these cataclysms, fear around another pandemic, or we'll just leave it at that. Rather than give in to fear, we are aligning ourselves with divine will, which always wants the highest and best life for all of us on the planet, for humanity, and for this earth. Sedna describes the Scorpio's strong will and defiant spirit that will overcome death and regenerate life and abundance, but in a different way than does Pluto. More importantly, both Pluto and Sedna have to do with the inner work of uniting light and shadow that not only heals the individual, it powerfully facilitates the healing in collective consciousness. That is why there are 3 important phases in the Scorpio hero-heroine's journey. Ego, which is the scorpion, ego's death, which is the phoenix, surrendering the ego's identity to die and everything that it's attached to, so that the spirit can rise out of the ashes. The 3rd symbol then is the soul's triumphant victory over the fear of death, over the fear of this perpetual death and rebirth cycle represented by Pluto and the phoenix. Sedna represents that eagle, where we allow our mortality to be transformed into our immortal, eternal self that is always aligned with Divine Creator. In the collective, this is about our acceptance at the deepest level of our awareness of our human shadow. It is only by holding ourselves accountable without succumbing to blame, shame, and guilt that we can facilitate that healing in the collective and unite opposition in harmony. That is the very definition of healing. It's wholeness that allows for the darkness of the human shadow, right along with the highest light and spiritual awareness, to be part of our enlightenment. It reminds me of Christ's teaching that says, "Those who are forgiven much, love much." If you cannot see to remove the log in your own eye, you will never be able to remove the speck in someone else's. Spiritual wisdom is not about laying blame and judgment on others. That's projection. But it's also not about martyrizing the self and taking all the blame on oneself for another. That is the gaslighting behavior we've been indoctrinated in for the last few thousand years. That's the age of Pisces, the low vibe of Pisces, where we are expected to be the martyr in order to save the world or save someone else. So it's time to clean it all up and practice unconditional love for self so that we have it for others who are still on their journey and struggling with certain things that will be coming to light as we move through this transition from one age to another. But Sedna definitely plays a role in that. That can only be done when we are willing to see our own shortcomings and hold ourselves accountable to work through the process of greater self-awareness and, more importantly, greater self-acceptance. So now let's look at the story unfolding with the Scorpio New Moon and where the 3 co-rulers sit in this chart. The Scorpio New Moon is in the 12th, and this represents a rebirth of consciousness and letting go of the old subliminal subconscious programming. The rulers of Scorpio are Mars, Pluto, and Sedna. Mars pertains to the ego's personal expression and identity. Pluto's energy purifies with alchemical fire by destroying what the ego is too attached to or seeks to control. Pluto's lessons are always about the correct use of power, and this death of the ego results in a rebirth of a new personal identity that allows the soul and spirit to shine forth with greater authenticity. That's what Pluto's ultimate lesson is about. Pluto tends to use its fire to destroy the material attachments or external circumstances to which the ego is overly attached. And obviously this brings up fear that must be faced and overcome by that person. Sedna also stirs up fear related to emotion, intuition, spirituality, deep grief, loss, abandonment, annihilation, and/or cataclysmic events. When these fears are dealt with, there is a rebirth of consciousness that cleanses and purifies the soul, bringing a newfound freedom that I associate with the eagle. The way I read the opposition between Mars and Pluto, especially because Mars rules the Aries North Node and the 5th house of creative will, pleasure, life's celebrations, Pluto in the third is transforming an old thought process and personal viewpoint that has been shaped by our government and social structures, which is Capricorn. Mars in Cancer in the ninth is activating a new world view, that's the ninth house, that defends family, children, and the homeland, which is Cancer. Sedna in Gemini brings a cosmic viewpoint far beyond this world to the personal mind and consciousness of humanity, the 3D world represented by Gemini. In the seventh, it pertains to other people and partners with whom we interact. It can bring up fears of abandonment in the realm of partnership until we realize that our thoughts hold vibration and powerfully create the circumstances we experience. That's an intrinsic lesson of Sedna's energy because it is part of the Inuit culture, the power of words to conjure what is sacred or its opposite. But we, as humans, using words are the ones responsible, and we must hold ourselves accountable for the language we are using on a daily basis. What's interesting to me is that each of these rulers is impacted by water signs. First, we have Mars in Cancer, which is ruled by the Scorpio moon, and that's placing an emphasis on water, Cancer and Scorpio. Pluto in Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which is in the sign of Pisces, another water sign. And then we have Sedna in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury in the sign of Scorpio. So all of this water is really activated, this ocean of consciousness in which we all swim, and by doing the inner work, we can clean up the collective consciousness. If we don't do the inner work and we remain unconscious with the words we choose and actions we take, then we are contributing pollution to the ocean of consciousness. It's time for us all to become more self-aware. So this particular lunar cycle holds a theme of processing deep emotional fear as well as the cleansing and purification of that fear. Sedna and Mercury share mutual receptivity in this chart because Sedna is in Mercury's sign and Mercury is in Scorpio, which I assign to Sedna. Mercury in Scorpio in the first house is actually ruling the 8th house where Gemini sits, Mercury's sign, and it adds emphasis to the Scorpio theme, which brings secrets to the light of conscious awareness. Opposite Uranus, awakening the mind to this connection between the physical world, represented by Taurus, and the spiritual world, which is Scorpio, and the sign that Mercury occupies. The opposition of Mercury to Sedna is mutually receptive because I assigned Sedna to Scorpio, and we have the ruler of Gemini, Mercury, in Scorpio. Sedna in Gemini also represents telepathic communication to these higher dimensions. It's about receiving and transmitting information on a deep subconscious as well as conscious mind level, especially with Mercury in this first house. Venus is in the first house in the sign of Sagittarius, and it's opposing Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius. So this is two benefics exchanging information and mirroring each other between the individual mind and the universal mind and perspective. The opposition between Pluto in the third and Mars in the ninth, that is the transformation of the personal mind represented by Pluto in the third, and then Mars championing the worldview, the new worldview, which is going to value, put stock in, and believe more in family, home, and our homeland. Saturn in the fourth forms a trine to this new moon and emphasizes the 12th house Piscean theme, creating a new system that allows our inner authority to take the lead, to cultivate mastery at an individual level so that collective integrity of the shadow is secured. We are only as strong as our weakest link, and that means that the individual must realize the part we play as pieces of the puzzle, pieces of the entire collective. We have so much more power than we realize. And when we develop that inner awareness and work to bring our own shadow into the light, we are contributing to the cleansing and purification in the collective. We have Neptune, Mercury, and Mars in a grand water trine. This, to me, represents the culmination of human emotion, intuition, and spirituality, which is flourishing in its expression or being brought into a grand new expression to be channeled into the ninth house of broadcasting, because the focal point or the pinnacle of that triangle is Mars. So this is about activating that new worldview and broadcasting it into the collective. Mars still rules the North Node in Aries, which represents our direction forward. It's sitting in the fifth house of creative will, self-expression, fun, pleasure, and celebration. The Libra South Node in the 11th is letting go of the group zeitgeist that tries to blackmail us into thinking like the crowd or using peer pressure to keep us aligned with this narrative instead of choosing our own pathway forward, making decisions for ourselves. Chiron in Aries in the 5th is helping us heal these wounds where we were constantly made to second-guess our instincts, to undermine our independence, invalidate our creative will and purpose, telling us that we were harming humanity by thinking for ourselves, by questioning the common narrative, etc., etc. What we are finally coming to realize is that the exact opposite is true. It is only by stepping out of that matrix, like all the ascended masters have done throughout the ages. They never went along with a crowd. They were leaders ahead of their time. And each one of us has inherited this divine leadership. We just have to give ourselves permission to express it now, to give it voice. And that is not a threat to humanity, or as the common narrative wants to put it, a threat to our democracy. Those are the lies that we have to let go of, and the sooner the better. Scorpio is about learning the right use of power for the purpose of empowering others to do the same. It's not about power over. It's not about material power that we lord over others or take by force from others. It's about walking our talk authentically while we understand the true source of all power that can only come from our connection to God, to divine source. So that is what I have for you. Please stay tuned for the planetary frequencies and hold the vision with me for Earth and humanity's inevitable victory. And I look forward to being with you next time. Bye for now.